Hi everyone, I'm Marcy and I'm so excited today because I've asked Julia, who's one of my closest friends, to come and show me how she makes her homemade creamy tomato basil soup. It honestly is the best I've ever had. And as a bonus, she's also going to show us how she makes her world famous grilled cheese.
I brought along my panini press so we can make some elevated grilled cheese for dunking in this wonderful tomato soup.
You've got to have that. It's going to be really good. First, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It just helps my channel grow. And let's get cooking. It was probably about a year ago that I first had this at your house, and I came home and honestly, I talked about it for days afterwards.
Yes, people, even when they say they don't like tomato soup, they love this tomato soup.
Yeah, it really is that good. In fact, I've been wanting to have you come show me this recipe, but I was kind of waiting for the weather to be right. Today, it's fall, and it was actually raining outside a little earlier, so I thought this is the day. We've got to do this. So what do we need for it?
We need 2 cans of Italian stewed tomatoes, a can of tomato paste, an onion, a handful of basil, some garlic, 3 or 4 cloves, a stick of butter. It starts with a stick of butter.
Always.
Flour, sugar, oregano and thyme, some chicken broth or vegetable broth if you prefer, some olive oil, and some half and half.
All right, and we'll go ahead and put the exact measurements in the description box below, but let's go ahead and get started and let me know if there's anything that I can do.
Okay, Marcy, you want to slice the onion thin, and I'll go ahead and pull the basil apart.
Okay. That's probably more basil than you've ever used, huh?
I love lots of basil, and I love that this is fresh from your garden.
No, I went out there and it was starting to rain. I was like, oh no.
So perfect.
And you like this really thin, right?
It cooks a little faster if it's thin.
So how much of this onion do you need?
The whole thing.
Oh, the whole thing?
Yes.
Ah, now you tell me.
We are going for flavor here. Lots of flavor. Okay, now that these ingredients are all prepared, we can go over to the stove and melt the butter.
So around how much oil would you say that was?
I would say about 3 glugs. You know, glug, glug, glug. That's how I measure oil.
So probably 2 to 3 tablespoons?
Probably.
Okay. All right.
Just so that the butter doesn't burn.
Gotcha.
Then we would put the onions in. And Marcy, I'm ready for the basil.
So I brought you my garlic press. It's an antique.
Perfect.
You squeeze it, but then you kind of have to scrape out and then go in. So I brought you a little knife.
Excellent, excellent. Okay. Smells good. I like it garlicky. I'll smell like garlic for a week. Beautiful.
So usually as soon as I put in garlic, Miley comes in because she loves the smell. And of course, dogs aren't supposed to eat garlic, but she loves just being in here when I'm cooking.
That's perfect.
Look who showed up like clockwork, I'm telling you.
She says, what's cooking?
Cue the beagle. Are you going to use all of this, do you think? Or you wanted to start with that?
I think let's start with that. About 3 cloves.
Okay.
It's good to start with.
All right. Should I go ahead and open up the cans?
Sure.
I'm good at opening up a can.
So at this point, the onions are translucent, which is where you want them to be. And you go ahead and add the flour.
So that's just your thickening agent.
Yes. This needs to cook the flour just about 3 to 5 minutes or so. It doesn't look very good right now, but we're just building flavor. That's what this is.
And it's so aromatic too. You wouldn't believe how wonderful this smells. I can hardly wait.
So now this just has to cook. You know how the flour has to bloom. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to add the broth. And then the tomato paste is next. I use about half of the can. You can use more if you would like to, or less. This is just kind of one of those things you eyeball, depending on how you like it. Once you've added the canned tomatoes, go ahead and bump the heat up to about medium-high or so because you do need to bring this to a gentle boil.
You hear that?
Do you hear it?
That's what a gentle boil sounds like. I've never even heard the term gentle boil, but that's just so sweet. That's so Julia.
You know what my mom would say? It's a bubbly blip.
A bubbly blip.
It's not a boil. It's a bubbly blip.
All righty.
So silly.
Now you said something about adding salt.
A little bit of salt.
Do you want kosher or regular?
Regular's
or what do you
fine.
want?
Just a little bit of salt. Just a little seasoning as you go. About a teaspoon of salt at this point.
So this has been simmering for about how long?
So it's been simmering about 30 minutes, but you don't necessarily have to simmer it for that long. It just depends on how hungry your family is.
So it could be short.
It could be shorter for sure.
Good, good. Okay, and when do we start with the immersion blender?
That's next.
Okay. Now the magic.
So have your half and half and your sugar standing by, and you're going to just blend this until it is creamy and velvety, and then we will add the sugar and the half and half to finish. And just keep on blending because the longer you blend, the creamier it gets.
What if you don't have an immersion blender?
You can use a regular blender, but do it just a little bit at a time because before I had an immersion blender, I had tomato soup all over my kitchen because I tried to do it in bigger batches. Don't do that.
With the creamy tomato basil soup all done, Julia puts together some yummy, elevated grilled cheese sandwiches. It starts with some freshly baked sourdough bread. She spreads a little butter on a slice, and that's the side that hits the grill. Then it's on to a couple of different cheeses. That's Havarti, followed by some provolone. She sprinkles with a little Italian seasoning, then tops with another buttered slice of bread. The lid comes down, and just listen to the sound of this delicious grilled cheese in the making. It's crispy on the outside, melty on the inside, and perfect for dipping in a hot bowl of tomato soup. That looks good. All right, let's do this. I'm going in.
We cut them in these little pieces because when my kids were little and their hands were little, this made it dunkable. That's where that came from.
Wow, that was so good. Even better than I remembered. It's like medicine for the soul. I remember being a kid and staying home from school when you're sick. And my mom would do this, make tomato soup and grilled cheese, but hers was from a can. So really you can't compare. This is just infinitely better.
It's comfort food.
Yes. Thank you so much for doing this, by the way.
Thanks for having me. It's so much fun. I love it.
This is great. You're welcome to come make tomato soup for me anytime.
I will.
I'll just randomly have the ingredients here at my house and say, hey, Julie, you want to come over? What do you know? 2 cans of stewed tomatoes and 1 can of tomato
Stuff
paste.
that you usually have anyway. And over the years, I got to where I just always had simple ingredients so I could make it anytime.
And yet it's so gourmet.
And my kids love it.
Thanks so much for checking out this video. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. You can also follow me at Marcy Inspired on Instagram and Facebook. Until next time, blessings from my kitchen to yours.